Revenge with Marvella. The mashed potatoes were still warm when my cousin Blake dropped the line that would define the next 2 years of my life. I just finished explaining my military role to Uncle Tom when Blake laughed so hard he nearly choked on his wine. "Relax, everyone," he announced to the entire Thanksgiving table. "Maya's not real military. She's just support." The room erupted in laughter. My mom gave me that apologetic look she always did when Blake acted like Blake. I smiled, cutting into my turkey, because 3 days earlier I'd signed deployment papers that would take me 7,000 miles from this dining room. Papers Blake didn't know existed. Papers that would change everything. The joke became Blake's favorite party trick. Every family gathering, every group chat, every chance he got. "Maya's in the military," he'd say with air quotes around the word military. Then came the punchline, "She does paperwork." More laughter. More nodding heads. I watched it happen at Christmas, at Cousin Tyler's wedding, at my grandmother's birthday party. Each time, I stayed quiet. Each time, I took a mental screenshot. I started noticing something darker beneath the humor. Blake wasn't just teasing. He was establishing a narrative. He needed people to see me as small, as insignificant, as someone who didn't understand real work. I didn't know why yet, but I was starting to keep notes. The request came through Aunt Patricia in February, wrapped in family obligation like a gift I couldn't refuse. Blake had started a defense technology startup called Vanguard Solutions. They needed help with logistics and supply chain management. Nothing complicated, Patricia said over coffee. Just organizing shipments, tracking inventory. You know, support stuff. What you're good at. She smiled when she said it. The same smile Blake used. I should have said no. Instead, I said yes, because saying no to family felt impossible back then. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was thinking I'd just be moving boxes and filing papers. Once I saw the clearance level they needed me for, I knew this was something else entirely. They used my military security clearance like a borrowed tool, something to be picked up and put down without care. Within weeks, I was reviewing classified equipment specifications, signing off on compliance documents, accessing databases that made my stomach tight with responsibility. But when I flagged inconsistencies in the safety testing reports, Blake waved me off. When I questioned why certain required inspections were marked complete without proper documentation, he smiled that smile. "Maya, stay in your lane," he said during a team meeting, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We hired you for logistics, not engineering oversight. Stick to what you know." Everyone laughed. But I didn't leave my lane. Instead, I started mapping the entire road, every turn, every warning sign they were ignoring. They called it a family meeting, but it felt more like an ambush. Blake, Uncle Tom, Aunt Patricia, and my mom sat in Patricia's living room on a Sunday afternoon in April. They said I was being difficult at work, overstepping my role, making the engineers uncomfortable with my questions. "You're being emotional about this," Uncle Tom said, using that word like a weapon. Blake leaned back, ankles crossed, completely relaxed. "She thinks she's command," he joked, and Uncle Tom chuckled. My mom stayed quiet, picking at her napkin. I left that meeting with my jaw clenched and my resignation already forming in my mind. But that night, an email arrived in my inbox. An email meant for Blake, accidentally copied to me because someone clicked the wrong autofill. An email that changed everything I thought I knew. The email chain was long, technical, and absolutely damning. Altered vibration test results for equipment headed to active combat zones. Forged signatures from engineers who'd never approved the final designs. A timeline that showed Blake knew certain components would fail within 18 months, right around the time warranties conveniently expired. Right around the time soldiers would be depending on that equipment in the field. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking harder each time. The equipment was already in production. Some of it was already shipped. I sat in my apartment until 3 in the morning, staring at my laptop screen. Reporting this would destroy my family. Staying silent would destroy me. And possibly destroy people who deserved better than faulty gear and corporate shortcuts. I requested reassignment on a Tuesday morning, filling out the forms with hands that barely shook anymore. No dramatic announcement. No explanation to my family. Just paperwork submitted through proper channels and a conversation with my commanding officer that lasted 11 minutes. There was a deployment slot opening in 48 hours. Short notice, high priority, exactly what I needed. I took it. I didn't tell Blake I was leaving Vanguard Solutions. I didn't tell Aunt Patricia or my mom. I just stopped showing up, stopped answering emails, let them think whatever they wanted to think. Let Blake assume I'd been pushed out, that I'd quit because I couldn't handle real work. That assumption would cost him more than he knew. My family threw me a send-off dinner 3 days before my flight. It was Aunt Patricia's idea, a gesture that probably came from guilt but felt genuine enough. Blake showed up late, still in his work clothes, smelling like expensive cologne and confidence. When dessert came, he stood up with his wine glass raised high. "To our support hero," he announced, and the room went quiet in that expectant way that meant a punchline was coming. "May she file paperwork with honor." The laughter rolled across the table. I raised my glass too, meeting his eyes across the candlelight. I let him have his toast, his moment, his last laugh. The plane was taking off in 72 hours. He'd remember this dinner differently soon enough. The first deployment photo wasn't dramatic or staged. Just me standing near a supply depot, helmet on, name tape visible, the kind of standard shot people took 100 times a day in theater. I didn't post it myself. Someone from my unit shared it to their social media, tagged our battalion, mentioned the mission in vague terms that didn't violate operational security. I was 7,000 miles away when it went live. I was inventorying medical supplies when my phone started buzzing with notifications I didn't check. The photo made its way through the military community first, then wider. Someone my mom knew saw it and shared it to the family group chat. That's how Blake saw it. Hours before I even knew it existed. Blake's first reaction was exactly what I expected. He commented 3 laughing emojis under the post, the kind of casual mockery he'd built his personality around. I heard later that he'd started typing something else, something about support roles and desk jobs, his fingers already forming the familiar joke. Then he paused. Then he went back and read the tags on the photo. Then he saw which unit was listed. Then he deleted his comment, which Facebook registered and timestamped. Because someone had tagged the 391st Combat Sustainment Support Battalion. Because someone had mentioned the mission designation. Because support doesn't mean what civilians think it means. And Blake was starting to realize he'd never actually asked what my job was. The second photo showed up 2 weeks into deployment. This one featured equipment in the background, the same electronic warfare systems that Vanguard Solutions had contracted to supply. You could see my inspection tag on the housing unit if you looked closely enough. You could see the serial numbers that matched Blake's production run. My phone exploded with messages I didn't answer. Missed calls from Aunt Patricia. Text messages from my mom asking if I was okay, if I was safe, if I'd known this was where his equipment was going. Blake sent nothing. But I heard through family channels that he'd called Uncle Tom at 2 in the morning, asking questions that had no good answers. Asking why I was there. Asking what I was doing with his company's gear. Asking the wrong questions to the wrong people. Blake made the mistake of asking those questions to someone who actually knew protocol. A former military contact of Uncle Tom's who'd helped Vanguard Solutions get their initial defense contracts. Someone senior. Someone who knew exactly who I was and what my clearance level meant. Someone who remembered that I'd flagged safety concerns months ago. The conversation lasted 6 minutes. Blake spent most of it explaining that I was just family, just support, just someone doing basic logistics. The contact listened. Then he made a call. Then another. By Thursday afternoon, Vanguard Solutions received a notification that they'd been randomly selected for a routine audit. The timing was interesting. The scope was extensive. And Blake's phone started ringing with calls he couldn't ignore. The audit notice arrived via certified mail on a Friday morning, thick envelope with federal seals. They called it random in the official letter, used all the right bureaucratic language about standard oversight and compliance verification. It wasn't random. I knew it the moment I heard about it through my mom's frantic voicemail. They were asking for documentation going back 18 months. They wanted production records, testing data, safety certifications, employee communications. They wanted access to files I'd once organized, systems I'd once managed, emails I'd once sent flagging concerns that were dismissed. Blake called me for the first time in 3 months. I was in a briefing when my phone buzzed. I saw his name on the screen and silenced the call. The voicemails piled up like evidence. The first one was casual, asking me to call him back about some paperwork confusion. The second one, 3 hours later, had an edge to it. The third one, sent at midnight his time, was different. His voice had changed. The jokes were gone. He wanted to know what I'd told the auditors. He wanted to know if I'd kept copies of anything. He wanted to know why I hadn't mentioned the deployment. The tone shifted from casual to concerned to something that sounded almost like fear. I listened to all 7 messages in one sitting, my face blank in the harsh fluorescent light of my quarters. Then I opened my laptop and forwarded specific emails to the audit team's secure address. I didn't call Blake back. The third photo removed all ambiguity. Briefing room, American flag behind me, coalition flags on the wall, my name on the presentation screen along with my rank and position. I was giving a logistics briefing on supply chain security, the same topic I'd tried to discuss at Vanguard Solutions before being told to stay in my lane. The photo captured me mid-sentence, pointer in hand, authority unquestioned. This one went through official channels first, then filtered out through the network of people who track defense operations and military contracts. Blake's investors saw it before he did. They started making calls before lunch. By dinner, 3 of them had requested emergency meetings. By midnight, Blake was explaining to people who controlled his funding why his former support staff was briefing coalition commanders on the same systems his company supplied. The family group chat went silent in a way that felt loud. The chat that usually exploded with memes and dinner plans and birthday reminders just stopped. No jokes from Blake. No comments from anyone. Just red receipts appearing one by one, blue checkmarks confirming that everyone had seen the photo and nobody knew what to say. The silence lasted 3 days. I watched it from 7,000 miles away, checking my phone during rare moments of downtime, watching the absence of words speak volumes. Then Aunt Patricia broke the silence with a message that appeared at 4 in the morning my time. Maya, sweetie, please call home when you can. We need to talk about some things. I read it twice. Didn't respond. Went back to work. When I finally did call, 3 days later on a scheduled personal phone time, Aunt Patricia led the charge. They were hurt, she said. Confused. I'd hidden things from them. I'd never explained what my real job was. I'd let them make assumptions. You never said you were doing actual combat support, my mom added quietly. I held the phone against my ear in the communications room, staring at the concrete wall. You never asked, I said. The silence on their end was different this time. Not empty. Full of realization. I told you I was in logistics, I continued. You decided what that meant. That night, the audit expanded its scope. More files requested. More interviews scheduled. The timing was probably coincidental. Probably. Blake's resignation email hit inboxes on a Tuesday morning. He was stepping down as CEO temporarily, the message said, to focus on supporting the company through routine oversight procedures. The wording was careful, parsed by lawyers who charged by the minute. The timing wasn't careful at all. It came 6 hours after auditors found discrepancies in 3 separate equipment testing reports. It came 4 hours after they requested his personal email records. It came 2 hours after federal oversight officers arrived at Vanguard Solutions headquarters unannounced. The temporary replacement was someone from the board, someone with actual defense industry experience, someone who immediately began using words like compliance review and corrective measures. Blake's name disappeared from the company website by end of business. Federal investigators replaced his security access by morning. They didn't need me to hand over evidence because I documented everything months ago. Every flagged concern, every dismissed warning, every altered report I'd found. I'd submitted it all through proper channels before I ever deployed, sealed and dated and logged through the military's Inspector General Office. My name appeared in the official audit report as a contributing witness. Not a whistleblower, not a complainant, just someone who'd followed protocol when she saw something wrong. The investigators had my statements, my documentation, my timeline. They'd had it all along. They'd just been building their case carefully, thoroughly, the way federal investigators do when they want charges to stick. Blake found out when his lawyer told him. I found out when my commanding officer thanked me for my service to accountability. The calls came in like a flood after that. Relatives who'd laughed at Blake's jokes now whispered apologies into my voicemail. Cousins who'd smiled while he called me just support now wanted to explain they'd never meant anything by it. Uncle Tom left a message saying he was proud of me, which would have meant more if he'd said it before everything fell apart. Aunt Patricia sent a long text about family and misunderstandings and how we all needed to heal together. My mom called crying, saying she should have defended me more, should have asked more questions, should have known. I listened to the messages in my quarters late at night. I didn't return a single one. Not because I was angry. Because there was nothing left to say. The courtroom photo was never meant to be public, but nothing stays private in the age of smartphones and professional networks. Someone who worked in the building took it during a preliminary hearing. Me in dress uniform, sitting behind the prosecution table, conferring with the lead attorney. My face serious, my posture professional, my presence undeniable. The photo made its way through defense industry circles first, then to the family through someone's LinkedIn connection. I heard later that Aunt Patricia gasped when she saw it. That my mom had to sit down. That Blake, sitting across the courtroom with his legal team, wouldn't look up when I walked in. He kept his eyes on the table, on his notes, anywhere but the uniform he'd spent 2 years pretending didn't matter. They asked me to help him during a family call I finally accepted 6 months after everything started. Help him like I owed him something. Help him like family meant erasing consequences. Can you talk to the prosecutors? Aunt Patricia asked. Tell them he made mistakes, but he's a good person? Uncle Tom joined in. Maybe you could testify about his character? My mom stayed quiet this time, and I loved her for it. I held the phone in my hand, sitting in my apartment back stateside now, deployment complete, life moving forward. No, I said clearly. He didn't make mistakes. He made choices. He chose profit over safety. He chose ego over responsibility. The silence was heavy. Support, I added, means holding up what matters, not what's convenient. They didn't ask again. In the courthouse hallway during a recess, Blake approached me for the first time in over a year. His lawyers had probably told him not to, but he did anyway. He looked smaller somehow, despite being the same height he'd always been. I didn't know, he whispered, glancing around like he was afraid of who might hear. I didn't know it would actually matter. Didn't know anyone would get hurt. I looked at him steadily. This person I'd grown up with, eaten Thanksgiving dinner beside, tolerated for the sake of family peace. That was the problem, I said quietly. You didn't know because you never asked. You just assumed support meant unimportant. That paperwork meant nothing. That people like me didn't count. He opened his mouth to respond. The bailiff called everyone back inside before he could find words. The final deployment photo wasn't about rank or vindication or proving anything to anyone. It was taken 8 months after everything ended, during my second deployment to a different region with different missions. Just me standing on an airfield at sunset, helicopter rotors still spinning in the background, dust turning golden in the fading light. My face was tired but peaceful. Someone from my unit posted it with a caption about logistics teams keeping everything running, about the backbone of every operation, about support being another word for essential. The photo got shared across military communities, used in recruitment materials, featured in an article about combat support roles. Someone I didn't know commented under it with 4 simple words that made me smile. The comment read, "Guest support matters after all." I liked it from my phone in my quarters, the notification making a soft sound in the quiet evening. I didn't reply because the photo said everything that needed saying. Later that week, Aunt Patricia sent me a newspaper article about Vanguard Solutions settling with the government, about new safety standards being implemented across the defense industry, about my testimony being cited in the new regulations. "We were wrong," she wrote underneath. I'm sorry we laughed. I appreciated that. But I'd already moved past needing their apology. They'd laughed because they didn't understand the difference between being loud and being necessary, between taking up space and holding up everyone around you, between demanding attention and quietly ensuring that the people who needed you most would make it home alive. That difference wasn't a punchline. It was everything.